Welcome everyone, this is Tactical Itch here, and today we are on our second video about the Khorne Dog Spam and the speed meta. Now, today we will be facing off the Grand Cathay, one of the slower factions, very ranged focus with a lot of missile infantry and artillery. And today of course we will be fielding our staple Fleshhounds of Khorne build, triple of them in fact, 2 Furies in the skies, and today we will be focusing on the 2 OP characters, the Cultists of Khorne. Now, the cultists themselves do not have OP combat capabilities. What is OP is their ability, the Gate of Khorne, allowing them to summon Bloodletters into the battlefield. It is a one-time use of course, so it is rather limited, but during their short stay in the material realm, they can do some massive damage with their two-handed, armor-piercing, anti-infantry sword. Truly a force to be reckoned with. This makes them so much better than normal zombie summons because they are not only bogging down enemy units, but also they're capable of trading extremely cost efficiently against armored elites like the Jade Warriors with halberds. And to make things worse, you can actually override the summon limit by abusing that reinforcement mechanic. Once you use the character to deploy those summons, you can, well, desummon it, and then recycle it, wait for the cooldown to basically finish, and resummon the unit onto the realm with the reinforcement mechanic, which causes this to be absolutely broken because not only are you summoning a pretty good combatant, but also you're bringing a pocket infantry capable of doing massive damage, costing around 200 gold with the ability, but the unit itself is 800 gold worth of value, capable of doing over 1000 gold worth of damage if in the right scenario. And we'll be looking into it as we go on with the battle. Now, as for our opponent here, Cathay, obviously they are slower with the range focus. We have a couple Jade Warriors with halberds in front, backed up by some Iron Hail Gunners. At the back, we also have a Grand Cannon and a big, chunky Terracotta Sentinel, a very powerful single entity. And in the sky, we have the Dragon Blood, the Shugengan Lord with the Yin lore, able to cast the Dragon Talons as well as the Ancestral Warrior Summon. Some very powerful spells. Theoretically, it can counter a lot of stuff that the Khorne army can bring, but unfortunately they will be suffering quite a bit at the hands of the doggo spams. For example, the Iron Hail Gunners, despite their short range, would be quite good at countering the heavy infantry of the Khorne army. The Jade Warriors with the Harmony buffing their defense will be protecting the backlines, where the Iron Hail Gunners will be able to pierce the heavy armor of the Chaos Warriors and dish out some massive damage, while the artillery as well as the Terracotta Sentinel will be able to counter stuff like, say, Bloodletters and other single entities. But unfortunately, we're not playing that game today. Instead, we will be using our mobility advantage to really cheese this engagement, just like how we do with kiting. Now, with our opponent here not bringing a lot of infantry at the starting army, we can freely hop onto all these Iron Hail Gunners or just sneak through the gaps, drop in some Chaos Furies, hop right on top of to the Grand Cannon, already shutting down the firepower, allowing our characters to push in. However, I did have a bit of a slip up in micro here, one of the Cultists of Khorne being caught by a bunch of Jade Warriors with halberds, and the Shugengan Lord will probably be able to drop down and try to snipe him out. Now, my opponent also summoned an Ancestral Warrior, trying to fend off all my doggos, but unfortunately there are only so much infantry, and one of the Iron Hail Gunners is caught by the Fleshhounds of Khorne, while in the front line the Shugengan Lord drops in, try to catch my Cultists of Khorne. Noticing that the Cultists of Khorne probably gonna lose to the Shugengan Lord, I basically dumped a summon in here, the Bloodletters of Khorne, 800 gold value of summon, and at a 200 gold worth of ability, absolutely able to shred all these Jade Warriors to pieces who cost 700 gold. It is absolutely an worthy exchange. Now at the back over here, we're still hounding the Iron Hail Gunners. Some dogs are left in combat, and the Jade Warriors with halberd doesn't have the best of attack stats, only 24 melee attack, taking a huge amount of time trying to bring down the Fleshhounds of Khorne, who are rather tanky themselves with 20% of physical resistance, while my other Khorne dogs are just basically roaming the battlefield looking for a better engagement as the Ancestral Warriors trying to push up, and I would just basically pull back, ignoring all these elite halberds. This over here, I totally slipped up in micro, accidentally charging them in, but of course I'll swiftly be pulling them back away from the anti-large armor piercing, and the Ancestral Warriors will be wasted. And now the kite is truly on the way, as my Fleshhounds of Khorne, most of them are trying to avoid engaging in combat, while my opponent trying to reform his ranks, pushing up some halberds to fend off the Fleshhounds. We have some peasant long spears as well, but unfortunately the Grand Cannon is knocked off its artillery, as well as the Iron Hail Gunners being routed temporarily. And right now, I still have control with the engagement here, noticing the spears over here and the halberds threatening to surround these Khorne dogs. I decided to, you know what, I'll pull them back and actually go around this little gap over here in the back of the map and backdoor their little backline, hunt down the skirmishers. While in the meantime, I still have my Fury summons dropping in, hounding all these Iron Hail Gunners. These Iron Hail Gunners will be turning around to hit them, but as these tattered Iron Hail Gunners are routed, I'll be jumping them right on top of the other Iron Hail Gunners or routing of these tattered Grand Cannon crew. My opponent summoning in some Crane Gunners, thinking that the backline is safe, is making a huge mistake there, as I am now bringing in more Chaos Warhounds and Fleshhounds of Khorne, pushing into this little corner here, going around this little back door and going right for these right now very exposed Crane Gunners and Iron Hail Gunners. Now the Grand Cannon is dropped down already, all these artillery models are destroyed, while my Lord and my Fleshhounds are refusing to engage. My opponent here trying to push my lords and also push for the objectives at this point, noticing that I'm not capturing objectives and trying to quickly capture objectives, get the tickets and end the game. I'm honestly not too fussed about it. I still have a lot of time left, and now I can just freely use my mobility advantage here, using these Fleshhounds to recharge these Jade Warriors to death, who are routed earlier by the Bloodletter summon, and now more Chaos Warhounds are coming in. There's only one single Peasant Long Spear to defend, while the other Peasant Long Spearmen and the Jade Warriors with halberds are pushing for the objectives, trying to do a quick capture. And the Cathay deployment zone is now exposed. But I'm ready to respond, as I have now summoned in some Bloodletters, who will be great at dealing with these Jade Warriors with halberd. Now at the back, Crane Gunners and Iron Hail Gunners all tied down by the Chaos Furies, not able to shoot. And now with the Jade Warriors with halberds routed off, these Khorne Dogs and Chaos Warhounds are just hopping right onto this spawn point. And with the Iron Hail Gunners being not quite timely summoned into the battlefield, probably my opponent thinking the spears are around, able to protect this spawn point. Unfortunately, they're summoned right onto a charge of these Fleshhounds and Chaos Warhounds. So my opponent will be summoning in some Peasant Horsemen, hoping to recharge these Fleshhounds to death. But the problem is, remember that I only used one Gate of Khorne summon earlier? Now the second Cultist of Khorne, who have ran all the way back to the middle field, is now running all the way back to the spawn point of the Cathay army, saving up his pocket infantry just for this moment. And now he's here at the spawn point with all these units clocked down by the Peasant Horsemen, Jade Lances, clocked up as well. One single Bloodletter summon, destroying all these Crane Gunners, Iron Hail Gunners, the Peasant Horsemen, and the Jade Lances. And well, all this value of gold routed. That's like 1,000 for the 1,200 for the horses, and then another 1,000, I don't know, 400. So overall, over 2,500 gold value worth of stuff routed, just because I have stumped in a single Bloodletter summon in the right place at the right time. And now, despite the Ancestral Warrior summon, this will be an unsalvageable situation, as the Bloodletters are reaping havoc around this little spawn point. And if you have noticed, we have been just focusing on the spawn point the whole time, because all the action is happening here. Over here, we have summoned in some Bloodletters, countering two Jade Warriors with halberds. That armor-piercing anti-infantry is just so useful, while my Furies and Khorne Dogs drops in, destroying that little Peasant Long Spears who try to defend the rear of the Jade Warriors with halberds, and they'll be quickly routed, allowing the Furies to rear charge and destroy these Jade Warriors with halberds. While in the front, my opponent drops in the Shugengan Lord, trying to basically tie down the Khorne Dogs and the Bloodletters, hoping to get some Jade Warriors onto this middle objective, as well as they have already captured the topper objective that is closer to their spawn point. But at this point, their spawns are not providing any support to their whole army whatsoever, as most of the infantry and missile units summoned to the battlefield are routed by my Bloodletter summon, a single Bloodletter summon, and also some of my Khorne Dogs and whatnot. While the Sky Junk will be caught by my Furies, and in the front line, all these Jade Warriors with halberds swarming this middle objective, hoping to get a nice capture on the battlefield with the numbers advantage. You can see that the capture objective is slowly being wrestled from my grasp and now going towards the hands of the Cathay army. But now some more Khorne Dogs charges in, doing some nice impact damage to the rear of all these spears and halberds, and now the Furies are basically rushing over, hoping to find a decent engagement to support, and they are dropping in, rear charging the spears and halberds as well. While my Khorne Dogs, some of them are pulling out from the engagement, and these Chaos Warhounds are just basically walking by, looking for other engagements to go on to. And now my opponent coming in with some Jade Lances, hoping to rear charge and support this middle engagement, as I dropped in a massive sword from Khorne there, destroying not only my opponent's peasants but also some of my tattered Bloodletters, doing some damage to the Chaos Furies. But now with the Flesh Hounds stationing right in this choke point, well, the Jade Lancers are pinned in, not able to do too much here. And now with the top objective here being captured by my Bloodletters, as these peasants and Jade Warriors are routed by my Bloodletters, I am now actually pushing for a 3 cap. These Chaos Warhounds capturing, actually helping the leadership to capture this objective 1, while also routing off the Jade Warriors, preventing them from disrupting my Chaos hero units. While also in the middle, I'm gaining control of the objective yet again due to all the Khorne Dogs and also Furies rear charging all these Jade Warriors with halberds. The mobility, cycle charging, and rear charging is so powerful in this game. Yeah, if you have a heavy infantry, just rear charge them with whatever mobility you have, and you'll be wreaking havoc, getting quite some decent value. Although my Furies, who were basically pestering the Skyjunk the whole time, were broken off and destroyed by the dragon-blooded Shugengan Lord. So now the Skyjunk was able to fire downhill and do some quite nice damage to the Flesh Hounds of Khorne, and possibly onto my freshly summoned Blood Crushers of Khorne. And also with the Talons of the Night trying to do some damage onto the Flesh Hounds, it's not exactly effective due to the 20% spell resistance, or was it 25%? Need to check. Actually 50% spell resistance on these Flesh Hounds. So the earlier Talons of the Night was definitely a mistake, wasting a lot of magic but doing minimal damage to the Flesh Hounds of Khorne. At the back we have some Crane Gunners being summoned, but now also being disrupted by the Chaos Furies. Some Jade Warriors with halberds are summoned in, trying to save them and pushed off my incoming offensive forces, but there are more Flesh Hounds, Chaos Warhounds, whatever, rushing in towards the spawn point, bogging down all their missile units. Even if they summon something at the back, first of all, they would not have the line of sight to hit stuff in the middle and support the fight, and secondly, I'll still have enough mobility to basically spawn camp all these missile units. So the Cathay forces are definitely in a rather precarious situation, as my Blood Crushers are also rushing towards this spawn point, pinning everything down right as they spawn into the battlefield. And now there's not actually much options for my opponent to really use. My opponent also drops in the Shugengan Lord, trying to snipe out the Herald of Khorne, but unfortunately with all the abilities, including the Locust of Wrath and the Deadly Onslaught, the Cultist of Khorne and Herald of Khorne will be able to punch back, forcing off the Cathay leadership. While at the rear here, we have all these hounds just basically ignoring the infantry that support and protect the Crane Gunners and just going straight for the Crane Gunners instead. While the Blood Crushers will be crushing all these Jade Warriors with halberd, a devastating charge from a powerful cavalry. There's also a second Terracotta Sentinel summon, but it will be taking quite a bit of time to grind through all these forces. Yes, it will be terrifying the Chaos Warhounds, but Blood Crushers are some tanky motherfuckers. They will not be going down so easily. The Jade Warriors are now being crushed and not really getting a good engagement here, as the anti-infantry armor piercing are just too much for these guys. They have been tattered by all the rear charges from Chaos Warhounds and Khorne Dogs, and now with the Blood Crushers, it's just a little bit too much for them to handle. Now to counter the heavy cavalry, my opponent reasonably summoned in more halberds. Now remember the very first Bloodletter summon earlier, where the cultist got pushed off by the Shugengan Lord? Guess what? He's back, bringing a third Bloodletter summon of the battle, dropping them right in the middle of two clumped up freshly summoned halberd units. These Jade Warriors, fresh out of reserve, got dumped into a bloody carnage before understanding what's happening. And look at them drop like flies. Like hot knife through butter, the Bloodletters are slicing through the ranks of these Jade Warriors with halberds. And when you combine the value of these Jade Warriors, that's like what, 1,400 gold? And that is basically destroyed by a single unit of Bloodletters of Khorne and some Chaos Warhound charges. And that is what, 200 gold for the summon itself. However, the unit itself is like 800 gold value. But basically absolutely valuable, cost-efficient trade. 2 units, gone, just like that. Just because I spawn camp them with a single Bloodletter. Excuse me for the stutter there. Anyways. The Terracotta Sentinel will be charging in, smashing some Bloodletters, but their job has been fulfilled. I don't really need them anymore. The free cap is almost finishing as we have control of the battlefield. All 3 caps are in my hands, and we have more Bloodletters who have abandoned this objective over here and pushed all the way to the spawn point, pinning down some spears of the Cathay army, and that's basically it. It's victory for the Blood God. Blood for the Blood God, skulls for the Skull Throne. And Khorne will have his share of the bloody tithe reaped from the peasants of Cathay. Now, one of the biggest problem I think with the domination mode is the reinforcement mechanic. Not only is it abusable by the player, but also by their opponent. You saw how I reinforced myself with extra additional Bloodletter summon that got conveniently deep-striked into the middle of a spawn point, bogging down a huge amount of my opponent's forces. And now, I'll be abusing this as an opponent here with the Cathay army. They are one of the worst victims of this reinforcement mechanic, as domination mode requires you to push for objectives, right? You need to push up your army to contest for objectives. Basically, your main forces are outside fighting for the objectives and whatnot, while you have to also trickle in small parts of reinforcement like this. Just like a couple Jade Warriors, crossbows, and then cavalry, or some halberds to protect and whatnot. But that leaves you in a very awkward scenario, as you have a main force that's sitting here, unable to provide any protection to the deployment zone to the smaller, weaker part of your army. And any players who have some experience in multiplayer should know this. One of the greatest ways to defeat an army is to just converge your mobility to defeat the smaller part, picking off all the stray units, and then deal with the main forces as the main forces got whittled down by attrition and combat. And this is exactly what we're doing here. So our opponent here bring a rather good front line to deal with a Khorne heavy metal rush build. So a bunch of Jade Warriors basically able to protect themselves and hold back the forces of Khorne, while the Iron Hail Gunners will be dishing out the damage against the heavy infantry. But unfortunately, just like the previous replay, we're not playing that game. Instead, there's only a couple Bloodletters summoned to pressure the front line, and all our forces hiding, biding their time behind the bushes, flying in the skies, surrounding the whole Cathay army. All the backlines, rears, flanks, they're all exposed. And we'll be able to pick off all their forces, basically converging a bunch of flesh hounds onto the backline, routing off the Jade Warriors with crossbows, and then also striking the rear with a bunch of Furies, maybe some flesh hounds from this end, and also maybe another flesh hound from this forest. And Cathay with a small starting army doesn't have much options. They are all about fighting together, getting harmony with different unit combos, but the thing is, domination forces you to split army, and forces you to push up the main army to fight for objectives. The reinforcements are now separated, unable to benefit from the multi-armed synergy of the Cathay army. And then their flanks are also exposed, because if you call in multiple units at the same time, there will be a traffic jam, your friendly units blocking each other's sight and attack routes. And then you also have the spawn camping issue, where I dump a unit onto the middle of the spawn point, and then all the spawn points are being clumped up with their own units who just got spawned in and now stuck on enemy troops. Or maybe worse, being obliterated by a pit of shades the moment they set foot on the battlefield. You can probably work around this by using multiple spawn points around the deployment zone, but that is extra micro. So think about it. You click on this reinforcement realizing, okay, there's something on here. So I need to click this reinforcement point, drop in something, and then your opponent starts hopping some random bullshit, maybe drop a summon on top of it, or if in the future, if we have the vampire counts, we can drop a zombie, and then they're now tied down, bogged down, unable to help before cutting down their the chaff in front of them. Or I can hop in with some Khorne dogs or something. Basically, tying down all these other reinforcement points, and even if I can't tie them down, I can just strike with my mobility. Just hopping in with a rear charge from some Khorne dogs, dropping in with the Furies and the characters, quickly routing something weak, say like a peasant spears, and by the time the units from other spawn points manage to foot slog over, I'll be able to quickly hit and run rout off the unit and just pull back all my forces to safety and denying them from that engagement. And if you think about it, that sounds exactly like a kiting strategy that people hate in multiplayer. So in short, Cathay really suffers from domination mode, where they are forced to split armies into a main force and reinforcements to split push objectives and whatnot, because their design is to fight as a whole, to move in unison, to benefit from harmony. But instead, right now, in the domination mode, you have to split out some random forces, splinter cells, to contest different objectives, while your reinforcements can easily get camped by the superior mobility of your opponent. You might have powerful missiles and a front line that can hold back your enemy, but of course your opponent can always just ignore that, do something they always do in land battles, hit the rear and flanks of your army, and this time, due to the lack of funds, you can't even bring a full balanced army to counter that. Instead, you have to slowly trickle in reinforcements, hoping that they are enough to counter your opponent's full-on mobility spam. And if your opponent has the right tools, they don't even need to wipe out your army to spawn camp you. They just need to hit you with their mobility. Once they get enough value, they just retreat and wait for another opening in your army and try it again. For example, in the first replay, most of the Cathay's army died in the spawn point. I was constantly harassing their backline with my hounds, dropping in some Chaos Furies, tying them down right where they are spawned, and then also dropping in those infinite Khorne Bloodletter summons, wiping out unit after unit in the Cathay deployment zone. And most of them didn't even have the chance to use up most of their ammo. To make things worse, Cathay doesn't even have the tools to counter these kind of spawn camping mobility. You can't summon in missile units when your deployment zone is threatened, and your best bet to counteract your opponent's mobility is your own melee unit. The thing is, Cathay melee infantry sucks at offense, with the long spears and jade warriors all having poor melee attack. And with Cathay having one of the weaker cavalry in the game, they have to rely on the heavy hitters like the Loma Riders, the Dragon Heroes, and also Terracotta Sentinels, but they are so expensive and limited in numbers, you can't expect them to do all the heavy lifting. And plus, Cathay has one of the harder times to break out of a spawn camping attempt. So basically, I feel like in the future, domination mode will evolve into a clash of mobility. Basically, both armies trying to outmaneuver each other by employing a spam of mobility units like cavalry, hounds, and flyers and whatnot. And proper clashes between entire armies will be a rather rare sighting, since the battle's outcome will be decided by who can pick off more of their opponent's army first with their own mobility. And I think this is where domination mode loses its unique charm as a total war battle, because you no longer see entire front lines of infantry cavalry crashing into each other. Instead, you'll just see small scale skirmishes and brawls all over the battlefield. It is completely different from what I fell in love with total war battles, and it is more comparable to regular RTS games available on the market. Anyways, thank you for listening to my rant about the weakness of Cathay and the problems of domination. I will be doing another video about spawn camping Kislev this time using this same doggo army. So if you want to see more, remember to hit the like and subscribe to keep an eye out for future uploads, especially the Kislev video. And that's basically it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.